This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm very, very grateful. If you'd like to support GunGuyTV and not cost yourself 1 red cent, you can do that using our affiliate links. You'll find a link for them in the description. You'll also find it at the first comment pinned to the top if you happen to be watching on YouTube. Please do check out the other locations where we publish the videos because YouTube is sketchy. And you might also check out the GunGuyTV Firearms podcast. You'll find it on your favorite podcast player. All right, today I've got an interview with Dan O'Kelly. He's a friend of mine who's a retired ATF agent and who runs gunlearn.com. He spends a lot of time in court testifying against ATF, as a matter of fact. Dan, thank you very much for coming back on the show again. It's obviously timely with President Biden. That almost is painful to say, but with President Biden announcing his stuff yesterday, I have a whole bunch of notes here. Suffice it to say that after here, I'll show you the little graphic here. What the heck? Since I have the graphic, I might as well throw it up here. Biden announces new gun control action, claims it's a public health crisis. That was on NTD News. And then, of course, there's been multiple reactions from multiple people, most of whom are seriously irritated with the guy, except for the gun grabbers. They love him. But he did announce a few things here, and let me know if I got these wrong, and then we can talk about them individually. He's going after the home-built firearms. You and I have talked about those a lot on the show. He's going after the AR-AK pistol and pistol braces, or at least he's trying. He's urging Congress to act because Congress hasn't, won't, doesn't want to. A lot of these, even the Democrats, a lot of them are from red states, and even the blue Democrats. And so I think they're hesitant to do anything. In fact, this morning, as you can probably see, there's been a round of folks last night and this morning hitting the airwaves, showing up, trying to pressure Republicans into doing something. Here's a story from Breitbart News that came from an MSNBC interview that says Republicans need to stop hiding behind the Second Amendment. It's not meant for weapons of war. And so that's the kind of stuff they've been doing. And then he's urging, I guess he's asked DOJ to come up with an ideal red flag law that the Congress can use as a template and that states can use as a template. And then they just spent a bunch of taxpayer money on throwaway anti-violence programs that do absolutely nothing. So that's basically, and then he appointed or is trying to appoint David Chipman, who is an anti-gun zealot and former ATF guy and worked for Giffords for a while, to run the ATF. All right, there you go. There's the list. I sent you this the other day, and you sent me back an email. My head hurts.
True.
I totally get it. All right, so I guess the question is, as I look at this, just taking the first one, what we would call the 80% lowers or the home-built firearms, is it even possible for ATF or DOJ to do what Biden's asking him to do in light of the court cases and the fact that AR lowers, for example, aren't firearms to begin with? I mean, what can they actually do along the lines of what he's attempting to do?
Well, keep in mind, Joel, that there are several definitions of a firearm under the Gun Control Act. Frame a receiver of a firearm is one. And then there's a definition of that term as we have discussed before. And what ATF calls the frame of a Glock, the frame of an AR-15, an FAL type firearm, and many others don't even come close to satisfying that definition. But the first definition of a firearm under Title 18 under the Gun Control Act is any weapon which expels a projectile by the action of an explosive. And so complete shootable ARs, Glocks, what have you, they definitely are considered firearms under the GCA. It's only bare or stripped virgin receivers that we're saying don't. And that's only in those models I named and a couple others. But to answer your question, ATF has the authority to regulate firearms and to enforce federal gun laws. Well, an item which isn't a firearm obviously isn't a gun. Gun laws don't apply to it, so ATF has no jurisdiction over it. ATF can't enact a rule or a regulation saying, okay, from now on, when you buy a scope for your rifle, you have to fill out a 4473. You have to withstand a background check because it's not a firearm. They have no authority over that. So by the same token, they have none over 80% lowers, 100% lowers even, if that lower doesn't satisfy the definition of a firearm.
So do you see this ending up in court again? Because ATF, it seems, routinely goes after stuff that they don't really have authority over. I mean, they've been doing that with the lowers for a long time, and you've testified in court a number of times, and actually there's been some serious decisions by federal judges on it. Is this going to go back to court, do you think?
Sure. I mean, it's not so much back to court, but stay in court. I mean, the issue on lowers. I have a case open right now where I mentioned last time we spoke, there's a man sitting in federal prison because he straw purchased some AR-15 lowers, and they're not firearms. He shouldn't be sitting in prison. So it's, that issue is still going on nationwide. Not that everybody brings all these cases to my attention. There are other experts, obviously, in the country who may be handling other issues, and sometimes the word doesn't get out. Hard telling who's all in jail right now for things that aren't even on the law book.
But this doesn't seem like a very easy task for DOJ and ATF to accomplish. Am I missing something?
No, not at all, Joel. The federal law says that a licensed manufacturer must mark a firearm with a serial number, and it must be on the receiver. The other required markings, such as the company's name, city, state, model, and caliber, can appear on the receiver, on the barrel, or the slide if the gun has one, if it's a semi-automatic pistol, for instance. But the serial number has to be in the frame. So something has to be a firearm for that law to apply. Something has to have a frame for the serial number to appear on a frame. So if they want to widen this definition or some kind of a definition or write a new law that says, okay, now 80%ers are firearms. Well, what's an 80%er? They're going to have to define it because there is no such definition at this point. An 80% receiver, 80% lower, it's a slang term. ATF is known to call things like that castings, machined bodies, unfinished receivers, whatever you want to call them. But even if you want to consider that, you have to consider it a firearm before you can require anybody to serialize it. Otherwise, it's outside ATF's jurisdiction.
Well, or otherwise, I mean, you have to consider it a firearm before you can require people to have a background check for it too, as well, don't you?
Right.
So then at some point is when is it a firearm and when is it not? That's already established in federal law. Can ATF just on its own through executive action change the federal law, the federal definition of a firearm?
No, they have to go through Congress. I mean, ATF doesn't make laws. ATF can make what's called a ruling, and we've discussed that. They have to file what's called a notice of proposed rulemaking in the Federal Register, open it up for 90 days of public comment. And then it goes through some more procedures that I'm, not even that well versed on. I just know that's the beginning of that process. But as far as making a federal law, that's done by Congress and the House of Representatives.
Just in case you're watching this and you're screaming at your computer, phone, or whatever, why isn't somebody already suing about this? I suspect that there are a great many suits in place or ready to be launched. Just to give you an example, yesterday I received this email from the California Rifle and Pistol Association, which says, when President Biden threatens executive order on your Second Amendment rights rather than fighting these issues in Congress, it is not only a slap in the face to every law-abiding gun owner in the United States, but also to democracy as a whole. CRPA stands vehemently opposed to presidential executive orders limiting our constitutional freedoms, and is prepared to sue President Biden to block these proposed executive orders from being implemented. That's from Chuck Michel, volunteer president and general counsel for the California Rifle and Pistol Association. So these folks are queuing up lawsuits as we speak. Let's move on to the AR pistol brace thing, because he's also asked DOJ and/or ATF to make these blanketly illegal in some fashion. You and I have talked about these a lot. What are your thoughts on his executive action here?
Well, a pistol brace is an item designed to strap to your forearm so that if you have limited mobility, or maybe you're a handicapped person and you only have one hand, one arm, you can still hold up a heavy pistol if that's what you choose to defend yourself in your home with, like an AK pistol, an AR-15 pistol. And if the government wants to make those illegal, what is going to be their justification? I mean, that's like the concept. I don't even know where there's a big leap in logic here. You know, if you want to make rifle scopes, let's use that example again. You want to make them illegal because somebody can use it to see a target in the far distance and shoot it. Well, that's not the bad guy. You know, the scope isn't causing the problem, just like neither is the forearm brace.
Does ATF have the ability to just, by the stroke of a pen, say everybody who's got one of these braces is now a criminal?
I don't believe they do. I mean, if Congress wants to make a law, and to your point, pin it on the fact that, okay, it's because the gun has that feature, we don't like that gun, therefore that gun is a prohibited item, that's one way. But ATF does not have the authority to do something like that.
You worked there for a long time, and you've mentioned before that when they get orders, it's yes, sir, and off they go. How likely are they to make attempts to do this, even though they know that they really don't have the legal authority to do it?
Well, they're going to do what they're told because, you know, they work, headquarters ATF works at the direction of the White House, of course, just like headquarters FBI, headquarters DEA, any other federal agency. Obviously, there's going to be a nonstop string of anti-gun suggestions and orders coming from the White House during this administration. As far as what all procedures they're allowed to get away with, you know, my attitude is I'm going to wait and see what they do, then research it, and then, you know, if it's not within things that are allowed by the law, I'll be willing to testify and fight against it. But I just don't know what they're going to try to do.
And by the way, if you are interested in what Dan's opinion might be, you might, as I urged you before, check out his Facebook page because he does post things up there. So I suspect that if he's got an opinion about this along the way, you're going to see it there first, and it might keep you informed. You certainly, you know, watch here as well. But Dan spends a lot more time working on his own business than he does on my show. So you might want to check out his Facebook page as well. And I will put a link in the description. If it's on YouTube, it'll be in the first comment pinned to the top, as usual. So much of this stuff seems like a lot of bloviating and not too much reality. I mean, it doesn't seem like he got up to supposedly he's going to make this executive action to just really stop what he calls gun violence. But even the actions he's taken, although over the top, don't really seem to amount to a whole heck of a lot, do they?
He's doing a lot of barking. I don't know how much bite he's effectively going to have. You know, he's trying to put on a good show for the people who are pulling the strings off camera. You know, getting back to that topic on these forearm braces, let's say they come out with something that says that a gun with a forearm brace is now illegal. You know, what about the tail hooks, the blades, the buffer tube saddles, the device that looks like a blade but holds an extra magazine, so it's a magazine retention device, you know, whatever you want to call it. They're going to have fun trying to come up with something that says you can't have any kind of a device attached to the buffer tube on your firearm. It just, what do they come up with?
Somebody's going to get around, aren't they?
Right.
It's a feature-based thing, really. And so if it's a feature-based thing, okay, change the feature. I think about the 80% lower thing. It seems to me that at whatever they try to define as the mark at which this thing becomes something that has to be serialized, will you just produce it up and to that point and a little below it and then sell it anyway, because now it doesn't need to be serious. Am I right? Am I missing? Am I nuts here? This is something that's going to accomplish absolutely nothing except spending a lot of taxpayer money and making companies and citizens jump through additional hoops.
No, you're exactly right, Joel. We just finished teaching our first post-COVID 3-day seminar yesterday in Bradenton, Florida at the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. We had quite a number of law enforcement officers there. Enjoyed getting back out in the field and teaching. And something that comes to mind is every seminar I teach, at some point, you explain that, hey, this anti-gun game that goes on is what I call the cat and mouse game. A law or a regulation comes out that says you can't have or do this, and then the gun public or the gun industry comes out with something and says, okay, well, how about this? And okay, well, now you can't have that. Okay, how about this? So, between solvent traps being the answer to parts that could legally be registered and make a silencer, or forearm braces, which might or might not be used as a shoulder stock, the whole issue about vertical foregrips, put a vertical foregrip on your handgun, you go to prison, but an angled foregrip or even a vertical foregrip, as long as it's attached to the magazine well on your AR pistol, that's okay, when they all have horizontal foregrips anyway. It just back and forth, cat and mouse game, and this is more of that. And to go back to the other issue, during the crime bill, the assault weapon ban that lasted from 94 to 2004 that Bush enacted, anything was an assault weapon, which was semi-automatic with the ability to accept a detachable magazine if it had two or more of the following: a pistol grip, a bayonet lug, a folding stock, a collapsible stock, not night sights, a grenade launcher. It's been a while. I forget what some of the features were. But the point is, in these seminars, I also ask, at some point, when someone brings up assault weapons, how many guys have been in law enforcement 15 years? Hands go up. 20 years, 25 years. Sometimes you get some of the old guys longer than that. And I go, okay, who has ever been to the scene of a bayoneting? And you get the laughter. Who's ever been, taking a report on a grenade launching? These features that they're talking about banning on firearms. What is the problem? Like you said, at the end of the day, the gun fires the same number of rounds just as quickly, but they're worried about these stupid accessories. And the bottom line is, it's all just an effort to further keep guns out of the hands of people so that the government can have complete control. You can't fight back anymore once they disarm you. And as much of an old cliche as it is, gun control is not about guns, it's about control.
Well, I agree with you 100%. That's exactly right. I see this is my humble opinion, that Biden really can't do a whole heck of a lot with executive orders. So they're grasping at straws and they're screaming at Congress and they're running around on the talk shows and news programs trying to pressure Congress. I don't know if it's going to do them any good. And then obviously Dave Chipman. Here, let me throw up a graphic. I got a graphic of Dave Chipman. There you go. There he is. How about that? Okay, Dave Chipman, in case you're wondering, is the guy, and now Dan's not wondering, but in case you're wondering, that is the guy that Joe Biden has a desire to appoint as the head of ATF. Now, my understanding about Mr. Chipman is that he is a retired ATF agent. He's also an anti-gun zealot who used to work for Giffords, fighting gun violence. Actually, he was just fighting gun ownership, but there you go. So right. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on Dave Chipman being appointed or suggested in this way. Now, obviously, it has to be confirmed by the Senate, I think. Is it normal for hyper-partisan folks like this to be appointed to government agencies?
Well, for starters, I saw a little clip yesterday on my phone where Biden announced this, and actually, we need to clear it up. Biden said he was announcing Chipman as the head of the AFT, which is the American Federation of Teachers. So somebody needs to let them know about that, because
he did say, I have to admit, he said AFT, I think 3 or 4 times, but he's called Slow Joe for a reason. And I try to give him some grace where he gets the letters screwed up. But what are your thoughts on Mr. Chipman?
Well, I didn't know the guy when I was an agent, didn't work with him. I know he's worked for Giffords for the last several years, which, as you said, is an anti-gun group that tries to put on the front of being, anti-crime. We're going to stop crime, and, that whole rhetoric about how guns are a public health problem, et cetera. It only stands to reason that Biden would have assigned someone who is a known anti-gun person to head that agency, because Biden's anti-gun. He certainly wasn't going to choose somebody from the NRA, right? As far as what Chipman's going to be able to do that anybody else wasn't going to be able to do, ATF already, as we just said, is going to do what the White House tells them to do, as long as it's doable. So that was already going to happen. The fact that, they've assigned Chipman to run the agency, I don't think he's going to be more effective than anybody else would have been.
What sounds like you're telling me is it really doesn't matter whether he appoints that guy or not. If he wants to weaponize the ATF, he can do it.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to give them their directives. I mean, the whole time I worked for them, every few years, there was some new name they gave to this campaign to go out and enforce the federal gun laws that had always been in effect. There were no, new federal gun laws, notwithstanding, there was that crime bill, assault weapon ban. Recently we had the deal Trump did where now slide fire stocks are machine guns. But I'm just saying, the Gun Control Act hasn't essentially changed since 1986. But every few years, Project Achilles, Operation Trigger Lock, they came out with all these names, and you would look around and go, well, these are the same federal gun laws that we've always had. They just wanted to make a new news splash out of it. I'm sure that Biden's going to do that. They're going to come up with a new name and send the agents out to, we also, every other year you would hear numbers versus quality. The beginning of each fiscal year, the big bosses would have a speech and tell you, okay, last year we had a lot of numbers, but there wasn't a lot of substance. We did a lot of one guy, one gun cases. So this year, we want these intergalactic, co-conspirator, big deal cases. Okay, fine. Then at the next speech they had a year later, it's like, we had some pretty neat cases, but there weren't very many numbers. So this year we want numbers. And it would go back and forth every year. So that kind of stuff, I don't see it changing. And it's all about justifying their budget, looking good to Congress. They get a good budget. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Arizona just recently passed and Governor Ducey signed Second Amendment sanctuary legislation that refuses to allow law enforcement in the state, doesn't matter state, local, county, or whatever, or state agencies or city agencies to spend money or help either enforcing or help enforce federal gun laws that go against the state constitution. And that's becoming sort of a popular thing right now. You'll notice this story from Bearing Arms. It says, as Biden issues executive orders, Missouri moves closer to sanctuary status. This is happening over and over again, and a lot of states are doing this. So this brings up the interesting question. In the face of all the new proposed gun stuff that President Biden is trying to do or Congress may pass, which I don't know, what actual practical effect does a state's sanctuary status for the Second Amendment have on the federal government's ability to enforce these gun laws within that state?
Joel, it's in a lot of ways similar to what's going on with the legalization of recreational marijuana in this country. Marijuana is still illegal on, the federal level. It's against federal law. But you have all of these states who have legalized it within their borders, meaning you have to keep in mind when a law says what you can't do, it doesn't really say what you can do. So legalization of marijuana, for instance, there's no law that guarantees you the right to go out and buy it. It just says, hey, we're not busting anybody anymore for that in this area, this state, this city, this county. But even though there are all these states that have no laws against possession or use of marijuana, the federal government can still come in and arrest people who sell it, use it, what have you, for violating federal law. Now, do you see that going on? No. If the federal government wanted to, they could raid conceivably these dispensaries in states that have them because they're violating federal law. Apparently they're not doing it, and it's obviously because they don't want to start some kind of I don't want to use the word war because I don't mean literally war. They just don't want to go to war verbally or financially with these states. But the fact is, no matter what state you're in, you're still in the United States. Let's say a state said, okay, starting tomorrow, we don't have a problem with machine guns. A lot of states don't. States that don't have a problem with you possessing a machine gun, okay, you can possess one. Problem is, you still have to have it registered in order to possess it because you're in the United States. Otherwise, the feds will come get you if they find out you have it. So that's what's going on with these sanctuary states as I see it. They're not going to enforce federal gun laws. They're not going to have any state gun laws that they're going to enforce, which would curtail your rights, so to speak. But it doesn't stop the feds from coming in and doing their thing. It'll stop state and local officers from assisting them, from the way I'm reading what they've written. But that doesn't keep the feds from coming in en masse and doing their thing when and if they want to.
Are they really going to have the assets to do that kind of enforcement?
Well, they have to prioritize what they're going to do according to their budget, their time, their numbers of people, and that's going to be determined by the special agent in charge of any given field division or field office. It depends on what other crimes you have to deal with at the time. They're not going to go out and concentrate their efforts on forearm braces if they have bombings, arsons, major violent gun crimes, carjackings, and things going on in the area.
I think we pretty much fleshed this out, don't you? Is there something else that you want to mention about any of this nonsense that Biden spewed out at the press conference?
I would just like to let all your listeners know who care, anybody who's still curious as to what in the world a filter stock is. I was interviewed by CNN recently about the Colorado shooting. And the guy that called me, he called me out of the blue, and I said to myself, I'm not going to talk to CNN, but probably should be okay because, for those of you who remember, I did a big CNN interview about the AR-15 lower issue, those not being firearms, a little over a year ago. And Scott Glover, the CNN reporter who did that, I spent a lot of time talking to him, and I could tell the guy was probably going to be on the up and up, and he was. He treated it very fairly. So due to that false sense of security, I went ahead and talked to this guy. The guy admitted he didn't know, his elbow from his you-know-what about guns, and he was quizzing me about AR receivers, the difference between a rifle and a pistol. And I said, well, if you take a virgin bare receiver and you put on just a buffer tube, a pistol grip, and a short barrel, that's a pistol. I said, but if you put on a long barrel and fit a stock, well, what he thought he heard was filter stock, then it's a rifle. So I've had plenty of people calling me, giving me hell about what is a filter stock.
What is a filter stock anyway?
Yeah, I'm like, and that's what a know nothing hears when you say and fit a stock.
Okay, I can tell you what a filter stock is if you'd really like to know. It's an addition to your AR. Because I'm addicted to shooting, hunting, and so on. I'm also addicted to caffeine and coffee. And so a filter stock is a stock that has coffee filters already in it and a little coffee maker in the back. It makes the gun so much more dangerous than it otherwise would be, because now you have a gun and caffeine and you're ready to go.
Well, during the Revolutionary War, they made some Springfields that had coffee grinders in the stocks.
I didn't know that. No, I had no idea.
All your listeners should Google that. Coffee grinder rifles during the Revolutionary War.
I'm going to do that. And, I know a bunch of guys I'm going to call the guys at CMMG or something, or Franklin Armory, and see if they'll make a coffee grinder for hey, you know what? I'll bet Black Rifle Coffee will make a coffee grinder for the gun. That would be absolutely hilarious. I love it. Dan, thank you very much for coming on the show again. I really do appreciate your time. As I've said many times, I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is why I have you on the show. So I'm really grateful that you do. Have a great week, and thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you very much for watching. I'm very grateful that you waited and went through the whole video. It's awesome that you do that. You are truly a Second Amendment supporter. Have a wonderful week. And as things develop and we learn more, then we'll get Dan back on, or people from other places, because obviously I don't know what I'm talking about. So I have the experts here to keep you informed. We'll do more of that as it warrants. So stick around. Have a great week. And thank you again for watching. Wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.